Welcome, sports fans, to another edition of This Week in Sports presented to you by www.sports-kings.com. That's www.sports-kings.com. Get that in your head. Don't forget about it. You can hop on over to our site and read all the content, from anything to the NFL all the way to the NHL. I'm your host today. With me, I have Michael from DC Sports. Michael, how's it going?
Just another day in paradise, Andy. Just another day in paradise.
Just another day in the office. Also with us, we have Joe. Joe, how's it going?
Still freezing up in Buffalo here, but warm weather is hopefully around the corner next weekend. Can't wait.
I don't want to mention
here,
guys. It was 80.
Yeah, I'm seeing Friday here supposed to be like in the 50s, and I'm a little bit below you, Joe. But
I'm getting my shorts ready, man. It's gonna be a party. It's gonna be a party.
Last time it was 50, like last week I was in my sandals. I don't even care. But let's jump right into these topics because we have a few different ones here. We want to keep it up with the time. So let's start with the NFL quarterback drama that's kind of unfolding right now, and we'll jump right into the first topic at hand, and that's Matt Schaub signing with the Raiders. What do you guys just think of this signing for the Raiders? Is it a short-term fix? Is he the guy? What are they going to do? Do they still draft a quarterback, perhaps? Michael, we'll go to you first.
For starters, congrats to Matt Schaub for actually, finding another organization that, seemingly we thought wasn't, was at one point just as bad as the Houston Texans used to be. But he was brought into Houston, I think it was, a few years ago after being drafted out of Virginia to the Atlanta Falcons. And he kind of helped turn that franchise around, with another couple of shrewd draft choices. Obviously, Mario Williams, who's now in Bo. J.J. Watt, just to name a few names. But, he kind of made that offense go. Him and Andre Johnson kind of had, a nice relationship going. In fact, it actually helped me out a couple years ago on my fantasy team. But now he's going to a team that's almost in a state of shambles right now. I mean, who do you really have at a wide receiver besides maybe Jacoby Ford, who's not really even
almost in a state of shambles? It's the Oakland Raiders.
I don't want to bash our buddy Justin's team. Shout out to Justin, our boy Arby, the only Oakland Raiders fan I know.
Jason Witten. Don't forget.
Yeah. Jason Witten, shout out.
Shout out to him way too much as it is anyway. But is he the guy? Maybe right now. Maybe this kind of helps the Oakland Raiders not bring in a guy. Maybe they didn't like a Teddy Bridgewater well enough. Maybe they didn't think that Derek Carr was the answer to move down. This is a deep quarterback class. You can probably find a guy later on. Even in the second or third round, even Aaron Murray, Aaron Murray. But he's been in a situation like this before, where he's gone into a franchise that was in the complete depths of hell, and has helped build it back up before he kind of orchestrated its destruction. But I think Raiders brass saw, we got a guy like Matt McGloin, who was quarterback under Bill O'Brien at in Penn State, and we like the way that this kid plays, and we see a guy like Matt Schaub who kind of is built along the same lines. Maybe he can come in and build, mentor Matt McGloin into something. But good for Matt Schaub. He's got a job again. I've never disliked the guy. He's always been a solid quarterback. So maybe this kind of legitimizes the Raiders. Even just a little bit. I'm not saying a whole lot, but just a little bit.
All right, well, let's. The Oakland Raiders do have the 5th pick in this NFL draft. Let's get your opinion here, Joe.
I think picking up Matt Schaub was a great move for the Raiders. I think he's definitely an upgrade over what they used to have a couple years ago in Carson Palmer. I think Terrell Pryor. We'll talk about him a little bit later, but he's a no more in Oakland, to say the least. Matt Schaub's a good quarterback. I want to say the year was 2009, and he was a 4,800-yard passer with Houston. before Arian Foster came around, they were a really big passing team. And granted, that was 4 or 5 years ago now for Matt Schaub, but he's proven that he can carry a team. He's proven that he can be that leader at quarterback. Now, he's not a guy that's going to get you to the championship, but he's a team that could get you out of the top 10 of the draft, which would be, fantastic for the Oakland Raiders. I think the fact that they want, and it's important to clarify too, they didn't sign him. They traded a 6th-round pick for him. I'm pretty sure he still had 2 years on his contract with Houston. So.
Yep, you're right. You're right. That was my misspoken word there.
Yeah, I just remembered that. I think it came up while you were talking. I think this eliminates the need for them to take a quarterback at the top of the draft, and I think a lot of teams are starting to look that route as well. I think teams are noticing that there's good talent at other positions, and they don't want to use that pick right in the top 5 on Teddy Bridgewater or Johnny Manziel, Blake Bortles, those guys. I think 2nd, 3rd round definitely should be a consideration for them because Matt McGloin showed some good things, but I don't know exactly what's there from an undrafted free agent. Not many of those guys pan out to be top quarterbacks. But I think Matt Schaub was a real savvy pickup for the Raiders, and I think he's a really nice fit for Dennis Allen's offense.
Yeah, and I mean, I like him as a stopgap. It's good that, Joe, you pointed out the fact that they traded a 6th-round pick for him. And I think that is kind of a gift in itself, a 6th-round pick for Matt Schaub. I mean, a guy who's going to come in. I mean, whenever you can trade a low pick like that for a guy who's going to come in and be your starting quarterback. But just to clarify, he had just about 4,800 yards in 2009, like you were saying. The next season, he followed that up with almost 4,400 yards. 29 and 24 touchdowns respectively. The one thing that does scare me with Matt Schaub, and I've said this for years, is he did have the best receiver in the NFL at that point when this was going on, when he was throwing all these touchdowns and these yards. I mean, Andre Johnson, for a few years, was the guy. I mean, as far as a lot of people are concerned. But, I guess I like it for now as a stopgap. It'll be interesting to see what Oakland does at number 5 with that draft pick. Let's scuttle right into the next guy here because it's very relevant, and that's Terrell Pryor. Terrell Pryor immediately is like, screw you guys, I'm going home. I want out of here. Like, I have no time for this. Joe, let's go right back to, what do you think of Terrell Pryor's, demands basically to be traded now at this point?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I started to say it a little bit, but I don't blame him one bit. I think he had a pretty good start to last season before he got injured. I think he had a good quality win over Indianapolis in there. Terrell Pryor, he's come a long way. I think a lot of people counted him out coming out of Ohio State. Didn't really think he was going to make it in the NFL. But I think he has a chance to compete for spots in a lot of the same way, if Michael Vick can compete for a spot, Terrell Pryor can absolutely compete for a spot. I think, what about Cleveland even? Could Cleveland be a spot for Terrell Pryor? I mean, they don't really have a quarterback right now. He was an absolute hero of Ohio State. I think that would just be a match made in heaven. And I think there's definitely he's got enough size, he's got enough speed, and he's got the arm strength. He's still a little raw. I think he could still be, pretty good starter.
I think the thing that scares people with Terrell Pryor is he's not a very good quarterback. I mean, he had 1,700 yards and some change last season. He threw 7 touchdowns. He threw 11 interceptions. I mean, granted, the Raiders kind of stunk. I think it was through 10 or 11 games. 11 games. 69.1 QB rating. I just think he's just not a very – I mean, like you said, he can throw the ball. He has an arm, but I don't see him being an effective quarterback. I almost feel like I could go out there and make some decisions very similar to what Pryor does. Michael, or Daisy, as your box says down here. I'll be your Huckleberry. Let's get your opinion here.
Well, first off, shout out to my mom for letting me use her tablet today. Thanks, Mom. I mean, his whole, I don't even want to know if you want to call it an outburst because, it coming from the Raiders, it's kind of expected. It's kind of well warranted. I mean, he sees a guy coming in, he wants out, he wants another shot, a new job. I thought that was a great assessment, Joe. Cleveland, why not? I mean, they just lost Jason Campbell. They need, at least one, maybe 2 quarterbacks. Although I kind of would have expected, a move like that to come had Rob Chudzinski still been coach, because Chudzinski helped out Cam Newton with that zone read-esque type of offense, and I feel like Pryor could probably thrive in a place like that. But I was one of those guys that was like, Terrell Pryor's not going to really be anything in the NFL coming out of college. I mean, can you guys name the last Ohio State quarterback that has done anything in the NFL? I'm waiting. Where was Craig Krenzel? Didn't do anything.
Keep waiting.
Yeah, exactly. Troy Smith, he's what was he, like a 7th round pick in a high in Baltimore, and I don't even think he's still with the team anymore. I can't even think of another aside from Kirk Herbstreit, who is a color commentator right now. There hasn't really been a lot of anything quarterback wise in Ohio State. So, I mean, I was another one of those guys. Maybe Pryor has a shot at being a backup somewhere competing for a starting job, and I was thinking of places, like San Francisco or something like that. But, if San Francisco trades, if Blaine Gabbert can find a backup job at San Francisco, maybe, Terrell Pryor has to find something. I mean, come on. If Gabbert's got a job,
but isn't Blaine Gabbert
can get a job. Well, that remains to really be seen right now. I mean, with granted, both of them.
I'm saying from a passing standpoint, I think any NFL GM trusts Blaine Gabbert more than Terrell Pryor, right?
That's kind of scary to say. I mean, granted, I think a lot of Gabbert's problems are, probably the same things that plagued Mark Sanchez when he was with the Jets. And any other quarterback that hasn't really panned out in the NFL is a lack of confidence in their ability to perform because of, the team around them. I mean, maybe, we probably have not seen the last of Terrell Pryor. Let's hope he catches on somewhere and does something, because I mean, even if not at quarterback, man, you've got the speed. Play another position. Do something that Tebow didn't want to do. Change your game, play another position, so you can play in the NFL.
And
I mean, we can always hope. Go ahead, Joe.
I just looked this up real quick while Mike was talking. Brown's offensive coordinator right now, Kyle Shanahan, last quarterback he worked with, RG3. Kind of same skill set. RG3, sure. Not trying to make too much of a comparison. Much better thrower than Terrell Pryor is.
The athleticism and the ability to extend plays, sure, absolutely.
Exactly, and the fact that they don't really have anybody on offense other than Josh Gordon and Jordan Cameron, they could have a lot of weapons there to work with.
All right, well, let's jump, because we're taking a little time here with these QBs. Let's jump right into our next set of QBs here, and we have, first of all, Michael Vick. The Eagles let him go, and then he's now a New York Jet. Thoughts on Michael Vick is perhaps, I guess we don't really know at this point, but perhaps the Jets starting quarterback next season, perhaps a guy who's going to motivate Geno Smith, compete with Geno Smith. I don't really know enough to say what he's actually going to be, what his role will be with the team next year. Let's go to you first, Michael. What do you think about Michael Vick in the Big Apple?
The same thing I thought about Michael Vick a few weeks ago when I said he needs to start looking at jobs at ESPN. I mean, I don't understand this move. You bring in a guy who's, granted, he's a veteran in this league, and at one point in time was the most electrifying player in the NFL. But that's not Michael Vick anymore. Michael Vick is injury prone, and the last time I checked, I mean, the Jets don't really have a solid offensive line. I mean, if they did, maybe they would have been able to run the ball a little bit better. And then you bring him in to compete with a young Geno Smith. I thought Geno Smith was supposed to be the guy here. I mean, this was supposed to be the savior of the franchise, at least for the next couple of years until the next big draft class comes in. But this just kind of baffles me. You bring in a guy who has in the past had off the field issues. Granted, he has seen the error of his ways. But you look at a quarterback like Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's backup is still, as far as I know, Matt Hasselbeck. That guy is he was able to he's able to show Andrew Luck the how a veteran is supposed to be.
on and off the field. I mean, have you ever heard of a Matt Hasselbeck off the field incident? I haven't. I don't even think Tim Hasselbeck has had an off the field incident. But you bring in a guy like Michael Vick, who's had those issues. Granted, he doesn't, he probably doesn't have them anymore. I mean, obviously, jail time would probably do that to somebody. It would probably, scare the hell out of me, to be honest. But that's always there, like in the back of somebody's mind that he, was in jail. Do you really want something like that in your locker room, especially with a young quarterback like that? I mean, that whole thing kind of baffled me.
Let me kind of butt in here for a second because I feel like, yeah, we probably don't want Michael Vick teaching Geno Smith how to conduct himself off the field. Maybe the Jets want Michael Vick to kind of show Geno Smith how to play the brand of football that Michael Vick used to play. I mean, there are some similarities there. Obviously, Geno Smith is never going to be as electrifying as you just said, Michael, as Michael Vick was. But I mean, he does have the skill to be able to extend the play and run with the ball. And I mean, who better to motivate a guy and kind of mentor a guy like that than Michael Vick? Also, is concerning the Jets' running game. They were like 6th in the NFL last year in rushing, so I feel like that offensive line can't be too bad. Let's go to Joe real quick and get his thoughts on Michael Vick.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I wanted to say right off the bat is that we're pretty sure Michael Vick is a changed man after the whole dogfighting incident, and now that everything's in the past. And I think Geno Smith got off to a really bad start in New York. And while Michael Vick doesn't really have, that experience in a huge media market, I think that's something that he can teach to Geno, is, how to conduct yourself, how to stand up in the face of adversity and really
that's a good point.
Be able to deal with all that stuff. That being said, I don't like the idea of Michael Vick being Geno Smith's backup for 1 second. And, the Jets invested a 1-year, $5 million contract into Mike Vick. What that says to me, I think, is that if Geno Smith doesn't win the job out of camp and just totally tanks, Vick will be the starter. And I think if not, I think they'll search the scrap heap for another quarterback that could be more of a backup to Geno, and then they just cut bait with Mike Vick before the season even starts. That's a lot. I mean, backup quarterbacks are making a lot of money these days, as are all quarterbacks. But I don't think Michael Vick would be the guy that you want to be the backup to Geno Smith. And, we've seen it in Philadelphia. I think Michael Vick's play is starting to erode a lot. He's 34 right now. I don't think he's really got a starting season left in the tank. I think what they need to do is get Geno Smith going, make sure he can be better in his progressions, and, maybe he takes that next step forward this year.
Well, let's talk about guys who certainly won't be playing any time in New York this year, and that's Mark Sanchez. The team's cut ties with him finally. Yes, Jet fans, you can be happy about this. Butt fumble is no longer there, disgracing your team. So let's look at some possible, and let's just quickly, and we'll jump into the next topic. Let's look at possible destinations for Sanchez. I mean, I know it's almost as good as gold that he's going to become Nick Foles' backup, and that's kind of weird. I mean, Michael Vick was Foles' backup. Now Sanchez could possibly be Foles' backup in Philly. But let's talk about, let's say one place you guys think that Mark Sanchez would serve a decent purpose. And we'll go to you first, Michael.
Jacksonville. Why not? I mean, the guy's in the toilet as it is already. He's been run out of New York. Everybody knows about the infamous Brandon Moore butt fumble. I mean, granted, Mark, if you wanted to brown-nose Brandon Moore that bad, I mean, seriously, come on, God. But, why not? I mean, as of Jacksonville right now, unless they plan on trying to trade up to get a Blake Bortles at 1, maybe flip-flopping with the Houston Texans, you have, was it like Josh McCown or somebody like that as a backup? I don't even know if it's really even Josh McCown. It's some backup that used to be an NFL quarterback is now in Jacksonville. And apparently if that's where, washed-up quarterbacks go to play and try to resurrect their career, why not? At least you'd have a viable weapon in Justin Blackmon. It's, just, Mark, wherever you go, just go, because that's probably going to be your best option to whoever it is that offers you a contract, man. 'Cause
cut the check.
Obviously, yeah, you just go, learn, regain your confidence. But, I mean, honestly, guys, is anybody going to offer him a contract?
he's coming off of, like, what was it, like some sort of shoulder surgery, right? It was like something in his labrum or something.
Yep.
Granted, it may not even have been in his throwing arm, but still, I mean, you get hit in that place, one, maybe two times, especially with as bad of a team as, Jacksonville is in general. How long is it going to be before you're injured again? I mean, it's...
Well, let's get Joe here on this. Joe, where do you think is a good destination for
going to take a chance on an injury quarterback.
I like the idea of Jacksonville. Oh, we got a little daisy there. I like the idea of Jacksonville and going to Gus Bradley, and maybe they've got a starting situation there. I think he's going to Philly. That's it. But I think the one other place that could swoop in at the last minute is his old college coach, Pete Carroll, bringing him back up to Seattle as a backup, and seeing if they can use him as a backup to Russell Wilson. That's the only other place I could see that could lure him away from Philadelphia at this point. Shout out to Aaron Moraes, our resident Jets fan, who actually lives just a couple blocks over from me. He's got to be elated that Mark Sanchez is no longer a New York Jet. But,
finally. It's funny, too, because I remember a few seasons ago when, I think it was his first 2 seasons, Sanchez was in the playoffs with the Jets, and they went far, too. And, it really wasn't at all because of him. They had a very stout running game. But I feel like Jacksonville, actually, Mike, I thought that was kind of brilliant. Maybe that's a good spot for him to end up. Even though Jacksonville will probably draft a quarterback, even if they're not able to get a Blake Bortles or Teddy Bridgewater, they could go Johnny Manziel. But maybe Cleveland's another place. They'll probably look to try to draft the quarterback as well, but maybe you could get a guy like Mark Sanchez in there and he could play backup or even maybe compete. I don't know at this point. I think the guy's trash. I think he's been trash. That's my assessment. Let's jump into the next topic. We're gonna
right quick, please, right quick. When going back to right quick about the Vic and Geno Smith thing, if you're really going to get Geno Smith to be as mobile, why are you going to try to turn Geno Smith into the next guy like Michael Vick who's going to get injured, or even like a Robert Griffin III? If you keep the whole mobile thing, the injury prone, like I'm still baffled about that, but I don't get it.
I don't think they should be trying to turn him into anything. I think they would just try to be kind of honing the skills he already has, because it's not like Geno sat back there in the pocket all day. He does run the ball. But anyways, let's jump away from the NFL. Well, not completely. We're going to talk Mark Cuban, so that's the NBA, but Mark Cuban's talking about the NFL. Cuban had some really interesting things to say. Basically, he said the NFL will implode in the next 10 years. And I'm going to read the quote here. This is from Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, super billionaire. I think the NFL is 10 years away from an implosion. When pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, and they're getting hoggy. When you try and take it too far, people turn the other way. I'm just telling you, when you got a good thing, you get greedy. And when you've got a good thing and you get greedy, it always, 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 5 always, turns against you. So Cuban kind of gave a few reasons in a 1,500-word Facebook post on Monday. He said, reason 1, I wouldn't want my son playing football. Would you? And I feel like a lot of people have already spoken out about they wouldn't want their kids to play football. Helmet technology is coming along, but concussions are still a very big deal. Look at a guy like Mike McMahon, very sad story. The second thing was he was talking about player behavior, and he's talked about how the NBA is kind of taking control of this. And I will actually, as an avid NBA fan, say that the NBA has gotten much better, especially since the Gilbert Arenas and Michael's boy Javaris Crittenton things. The NBA is cracked down on this stuff. The NFL has gotten out of control. This is probably the ugliest time for the NFL as far as stuff like that goes. Shout out to Richie Incognito, Jonathan Martin,
Jim
all
Irsay
of that
too.
stuff. Yeah,
Jim Irsay.
Jim Irsay, yep. And the next thing was, number 3 was their TV strategy today is perfect, but Cuban goes into saying adding extra games, things like that, rumors of maybe Saturday games happening. I know a lot of people, myself included, I already hate the idea of the Thursday games. That irks me. It's probably my least favorite part. I know a lot of a lot of people like it because it's more football, but I think that the Thursday game's kind of a waste. I mean, if you look at statistics of what happens on Thursday night football, the teams don't always perform very well. Most of the time they underperform. I'm trying to get through this real quick. Number 4 was fantasy football. I know, I love fantasy football, as do many people, but Cuban was talking about how the NFL's fan base is, a lot of it has come from fantasy football because it's become such a staple in the American way of life nowadays. I mean, everybody knows that you have, we'll say, Linda from your office who plays fantasy football, and she beats all the guys who know about football because it's really more luck than anything at this point. And then his 5th point was the risk of TV changing. We know in the internet generation that TV is maybe one day going to become more obsolete like a cable TV. At this point, I think it's kind of slowed down. I did see a good quote from somebody here that cable and satellite subscriptions were both up in the past year. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but that kind of counters Mark's point. Let's go to you guys too. We'll go with you first, Michael. Real quick, give us, what do you think about Mark Cuban's comments here? Whether or not he's off base, etc. Fire away.
Cubes. Do I agree with you? Yeah, I agree with him to an extent, especially with the way, Goodell trying to, either A, get rid of the extra point or move it back 5, 10, 15, 25 yards, however the hell he wants to move it back. If you keep changing the aspect of the game, yes, I think fans are going to go away from it. But the only Hogs that got slaughtered last year were the Washington Redskins online. I mean, that thing was atrocious. But in a sense, to his defense, we have seen this happen before. And real quick shout out to our boys in the new SK Rink Kings, or the Ring Kings. Those guys do some great work over there. This happened with, wrestling, and prevalently the WCW, which
Wrestling.
13 years ago, yes, with wrestling. Wrestling, as it's known down here in the South.
We don't want to offend real wrestlers.
13 years ago tomorrow is the anniversary of the WCW closing its doors. Why? Because they oversaturated their market. WWF, now WWE, I don't care. It'll always be the WWF to me. We've seen aspects of this happen before, but do I seriously think that the NFL is going to, super implode like some sort of, black hole or whatever? No. But that obviously remains to be seen with Goodell behind the Iron Curtain. Cuban is a businessman. He makes valid points. That doesn't automatically necessarily mean we have to agree with him. Seriously? Wasn't it like the American dream for every dad to have their son play football? I wouldn't want my kid to play football. I mean, you don't hear people, bitching about how unsafe hockey is. It's expected. You play the game, you know how it is. I mean, come on, Cuban. God, what are you raising a daughter over there? Seriously?
Well, let's jump into Joe real quick because Michael's off the reservation now. Michael made some really good points. So let's hear your thoughts here.
I'm gonna hop into this because I've got a little bit of a hot take on this because Mark Cuban's a pretty smart businessman, and I'm gonna be real frank with you guys. I don't think it happens in 10 years. I don't even think it happens in 20 years, but I think he's really onto something here. I think the NFL is just getting way too crazy with all these rule changes, ideas to keep the game competitive. All these games going over to London and trying to go worldwide is absolutely ridiculous. And, actually to introduce something new that actually makes a very good point. Our girl, Chelsea Handler, that we were talking about with Alex Rodriguez the other show, she had Drew Brees on last night, and Drew Brees was promoting the Microsoft Surface tablet. And as you guys may or may not know, Microsoft and the NFL have a big, huge deal now, so that the Xbox One will actually have NFL Sunday Ticket or something like that. But the NFL is actually going to start phasing out playbooks with Microsoft Surface tablets, so the guys can use that and work plays and all that stuff. And Drew Brees, making a joke, it was as kind of like a subtle shot at Roger Goodell, maybe, because something like this is very possible. He says you bring up social media next to that, give fans the opportunity to say, hey, why don't you do this play? Hey, why don't you throw to this guy and help out my fantasy team? Think about that kind of thing with that technology.
they'll do it too. It's so ridiculous. They'll have like a.
Exactly.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but they'll have like a game. That's what they're gonna do. They'll make a Saturday game, and they'll be like, fans get to pick like a certain. Oh my God, I don't even want to think about it. Like it makes
Exactly.
me.
But you say that right now.
Let's let Joe finish his thought.
But you say that right now, and you say, "Holy cow, that could actually happen," and that is why Mark Cuban is so right.
It is.
He's so.
If I let me get a point here.
Yeah,
I think first of all, buy PlayStation, guys. No Xbox.
Yeah.
Secondly, let me go. The thing that really irks me is, first of all, I do agree with Mark Cuban in a sense. And actually, Joe, you said you took the words out of my mouth. I don't think it happens in 10 years. I do think it happens. And I've complained every single year. You know, basketball is my favorite sport. Football is my second favorite sport. But I kind of been falling out of love with football for the past few years because, I mean, my Lions kind of stink, but I mean that's been there. That's always existed. But the rules. I mean, these penalties are out of control. I mean, you get fined for wearing the wrong socks. It's just like. And people will probably counter at me by saying, well, the NBA is soft and there's flopping and all this. But with the NBA, you can kind of get away with it, I think, a little bit because it's not a sport that's predicated off tackling the guy and guys, you know, pushing each other in the trenches at the line of scrimmage. So I feel like with a sport that's not necessarily it's not necessary that there's constant contact as it is in football. I think you can get away with that. A la the MLB is, you know, having the new collision rule this year too, or looking at the new collision rule this year too. And I think they can get away with stuff like that because it's not a constant game where you're pushing each other and you're, you know, having contact and you're wearing pads. People expect people to get lit up in the NFL. That's what fans have grown accustomed to seeing. So I feel like Cuban has a lot of valid points. And I was saying to you guys before the show that I like the fact that Cuban didn't go all Skip Bayless on us and just say something outlandish like the NFL's dead in 10 years and then not back it up. He gave a very thought out 1,500 words on Facebook as to why he felt that was going to happen. So, I mean, I kind of commend Mark Cuban. I do like the guy. I think 10 years is a bit soon because the NFL is America's sweetheart right now. But I do like the fantasy football aspect was interesting because everybody loves fantasy football. But maybe it is ruining the game. And, Joe, you said that with the Microsoft thing, the tablets. Like, fans could pick, hey, throw it, and I think you said throw it to my fantasy receiver. Like, that's already happening. I mean,
so some
players are already to the
other
point where they get berated on social media if they do poorly. I can think of Ray Rice last year against the Lions, and he killed me, actually, in a playoff matchup. He broke free like 10 yards, and he just fell down. And that's the second time we've seen Ray Rice do something like that. But that's what he's supposed to do. I was a little peeved because it ruined me. I needed like 6 points, and I think he would have gotten me like 10 there. But at the end of the day, that was the right move for the football game. And I'm first and foremost, you know, watch football played the right way. Let's go, Michael. You look like you may have a comment here, so let's finish this up. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking about how Gary Bettman has been doing with the NHL in the past, 10, 15 years. There's been 2 lockouts. The fans haven't really been, I don't know, coming to the games as much as they used to, and I'm starting to wonder, and when everybody was, doing the whole new rule changes in the NHL, putting in a trapezoid behind the net to make the goalies, more safe, I thought it was a crock of crap. I mean, as I mentioned before, I grew up, my dad would always show me the older games in the 70s and 80s where people would just beat the ever-loving hell out of each other. And it was, the fan reaction was amazing. But, with everybody trying to be safe and everything, just let people play the game. I mean, people enjoy the game as it is. You know what, Herm Edwards, you play to win the game. You watch people to play the game. I mean, I don't know, I'm kind of sensing this whole everybody's trying to be all safe and everything. That kind of goes against football in general, I mean, or even, the violent sports in general. It just seems kind of soft, kind of lame.
But the NFL's got to protect their end as a business. I think they're getting sued by players and things of that nature. Joel, final thought. Let's have you finish this topic out.
Yeah, and that's a crap. I'm sorry.
I think obviously the NBA is not immune to any of this, silly monetization stuff. I saw something they want to do logos on NBA jerseys or something like that. No, just leave that to the WNBA. Stop.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
That's just gonna for me. That's just such a killer. It just feels like it's so cheap. It's a money ploy, which obviously there's some sports that need it, but the NBA, when guys are getting paid 25 million already, what's that going to do?
Well, that's why they need it. The owners need it because they're paying players too much.
Yeah, that's true. But like I said, Mark Cuban's a really smart guy. I'll give a shout out to anybody that kind of likes reading marketing stuff. He had a really great post on mobile marketing in sports teams and why people want to, people don't want to be on their phones all games. They want to be putting them down and watching games. But teams have made all these apps and, crazy stuff to do during the games. Like, no, put your phones down and watch the show. Mark Cuban is a fantastic businessman, in my opinion, and he has a ton of great ideas for how, sports are supposed to be. And, I think he's spot on in saying, NFL, whoa, take a step back, let people enjoy your game.
Yeah, and I'll go further than to say, in Joe's opinion, Mark Cuban is just, it's a fact. He's a great businessman. There's really no getting around that. So let's jump into our last topic here, and we're going to talk March Madness. I can't do the Dickie V. I would have tried, but I would have failed. So let's jump into this one, and we're going to just talk about a few bracket busters since this year has been just out of control. I'll just run through, and you guys can fill in rest here, but I'll run through a few. Obviously, the big one was Duke. They kind of broke everybody's hearts. Ohio State was another one that they lost a date in. Obviously, you have Villanova was a 2 seed. They lost. Although I'm a Villanova fan, I don't really know how much other people know about Villanova, other than the fact that they had an outstanding record, but their team was terrible. They lived and died by the 3. No shocker that UConn beat them. I guess this one's not as surprising because they were the 9 seed, but I think a lot of people were kind of shocked by the Gonzaga beating Oklahoma State. I know I run a pool, and I had a lot of Oklahoma States filled out on the sheets I looked through. Some of the other big ones would be, well, let's just, so I'm not talking the whole time. We'll go to you first, Michael, and you can talk about some of these upsets that you've seen throughout the day before I name them all.
Well, obviously the one that killed me before Duke was Ohio State. As soon as everybody, I saw that Ohio State had lost the date, and I was like, yep, bracket's busted on the first day for, what is it, the 3rd year in a row now, I think, I've had mine. Oh, lucky you, good for you.
I'm sorry.
But, obviously, anytime a 14 beats a 3, no matter who it is, that's always shocking. VCU going down was one that was completely strange to me. But I think the one that, and besides Duke and, Ohio State, Kansas losing to Stanford in the 2nd round. I was like, what? You got to be kidding me. But in a sense, I'm really, enjoying all of this. Because it's kind of like, okay, the little guy has been kicked around for all these years. Nobody's been picking the small. Then you got to, every once in a while you get like a George Mason or a Florida Gulf Coast. Well, now you see these, teams like that are coming out of the woodwork now. You got 14s beating 3s in Mercer, and then, subsequently losing to 12s in Tennessee or whatever. You've got 9s, winning. You've got, Kentucky beating Wichita State, which I don't know is a complete shock to the Shockers, but, why Clee Anthony, didn't take that last shot is, still, that's probably more of a shocker to me than Kentucky actually winning it. But it's kind of, it almost seems like everything is evening out. It's kind of cool. Eventually, now we've seen a 14 beat a 3. How long is it? It might not be 2-3 years before a 15 maybe beats a 2, or maybe the elusive 16 beats a 1.
Well, we know that
I'm actually excited for all these upsets. I think it's.
All right, so Joe,
it's quite possible.
Let's let Joe speak on some of the upset that that he's seen, ones that really kind of stuck in his mind.
Okay, so first off, before I say anything else, you want to know who has 2 thumbs and had Dayton beating Syracuse? Hate me all of upstate New York. Dude, my bracket this year was actually really good. I picked every 12 over every 5. I picked Dayton to get going. You know, it's just part of it too is that there's just so much, data out there, and there's so much, evidence that everybody just kind of expects there to be a couple of upsets, but it's not really for the reason why. And I'll tell you why. Because yesterday there were actually a lot of great columns that all said the same thing. I read something in the Buffalo News. I saw the great Jay Williams talking about it on SportsCenter. It was a really great point and it was a really great point that I hadn't thought of. That all these smaller teams, 11s, 12s, Mercers, even going back to Lehigh when they beat Duke 2 years ago, Florida Gulf Coast, all that stuff. These teams are not guys loaded up with freshmen and sophomores that are super talented. These are teams with juniors and seniors that have been together, that are hard-working,
bingo
kind of dudes that work together and they win basketball games. And when you only need to win one game, that is the key. And so many people that do brackets, they're just like, most people just say, oh, this team is the higher seed, I'm going to put them in over here. No, there are a ton of good basketball teams in there, and you need to really look at that kind of stuff when you're doing your bracket. Now, looking at the teams that are still alive, who's like that? Dayton is like that. Stanford is like that. Tennessee, they got some big guys down low. They're like that too. These are all very good basketball teams that did not get seeded high. Kentucky too. In Kentucky, they're the king of the one and done, but they're still, a pretty good basketball team. I think a lot of the upsets that did happen, I think they were honestly pretty predictable this year.
Yeah, I'm glad you said what you said too about the seniors and the juniors, because that's exactly what these teams that nobody has any confidence in have. They have guys who have played there because they're not guys who are highly touted prospects to go into the NBA. Jabari Parker and Andrew Wiggins, Marcus Smart. Those are the 3 guys who are going to go in the top 5, and they're already sitting at home right now.
And can I just say too as well, Kansas, as much as people talk about Andrew Wiggins, they really were not that good of a team without Joel Embiid.
No, they weren't.
I really didn't think they were that good at all.
He was clearly the better college player of the two, and a lot of people feel like he'd be the better pro. I'm not one of those people. But let me, real quick to me, the thing that's interesting is the fact that I think people have ignored that, right now in the Sweet 16 round, we have, Dayton and Stanford playing each other. The problem for those two teams is the winner's going to probably play Florida, and Florida's just vicious. Although Albany kind of gave Florida a scare in the first round with those ugly, ugly, ugly uniforms they have. I mean,
Shout out to the American East Conference. Fantastic.
Shout out to the fact that somebody took like an old Lakers uniform and just destroyed it. They had like the top where your name would be for jersey was yellow, and then the back of the jersey was purple, and then the back of the shorts was yellow, and then when they turned around, it was a totally different color. The Washington Wizards did that a few years ago with gold uniforms when Gilbert Arenas was there, and it was awful too.
Yeah, they were nasty.
But I think. Yeah, and Wichita State's another one. Wichita State's gone. I feel like we had. There's been some close games. If I sit here and look at it all, because it's impossible to take with memory. The one that really I had Dayton as well, although I didn't have them beating Syracuse. Although I should have, because Syracuse seems like they're one of those Duke type teams who always disappoints. And yeah, I'm gonna get killed tomorrow too when people watch this, because I live in Syracuse Nation as well. Joe, I feel your pain. The funniest thing is I said on Facebook, as all the Syracuse fans berated the Duke fans on my timeline after Duke lost, I posted on Facebook, it's going to be hilarious when the Duke fans get their revenge tomorrow. And I was kind of half joking, and then it happened. And when it was happening, I was like, oh, my God. I was just waiting for it. And then my timeline was flooded because, there's a lot of Duke fans everywhere. And, so there's a ton around here naturally, and they just Syracuse fans. But let's talk, because we've talked the upsets here. We have the Sweet 16 round, and that's going to actually pick up tonight. let's talk about a couple things you're looking for. I'll just go over the matchups real quick for the whole thing, not just tonight's games. We have Florida and UCLA. We have Dayton and Stanford. Virginia, Michigan State. That should probably be a good one. Iowa State and UConn. We have Arizona and San Diego State. San Diego State, you're my boy. Baylor and Wisconsin. We have Kentucky. Julius Randle. Julius Randle's like the only real stud left as an NBA prospect's concerned. So Kentucky, Louisville, that's a good one. I mean, that's obviously an in-state rivalry there. Then we have Tennessee and Michigan. Let me get your thoughts. I'll go to you first, Michael. What do you expect to see? Go fast, too, because we got about 5 minutes left. What do you think about the Sweet 16 games?
Well, I mean, obviously with highlighting, obviously the Louisville, Kentucky, Michigan State, Virginia is going to be huge. Even Arizona, UCLA, that has potential to be, I mean,
Arizona,
when it gets to the Sweet 16, San Diego State. Well, I mean, still, either way, that's still going to be a good, solid matchup.
Because UCLA plays Florida, so it's a 1 and a 4 on both sides. So I get where you got mixed up.
Obviously, there's teams you didn't expect to be in there. Obviously, nobody expected. I personally didn't expect Dayton or Stanford. But this is where we start seeing. But Joe's like Zen master when it comes to these things apparently. But this is where we're going to start separating. As cliche as it sounds, who's the contender, who's the pretender, and then even it gets even worse in the Elite Eight. Who's gonna, I still I picked Florida at the beginning of the show. Well, like what was it, 2 weeks ago I think it was, and I'm sticking by that as much as I really would have loved to see Greg Marshall and Wichita State win it. But I mean it's gonna be. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, there's some really good matchups, especially that Virginia-Michigan State one. I think a lot of people are going to watch that
one. What are you looking forward to the most, Joe, in this next round that kicks off tonight?
I'm looking forward to how Florida does, even though they don't play until Thursday night.
Or wait, it's not tonight. I'm totally wrong about that.
It's Thursday for. Oh yeah, now that I'm looking at it.
Thursday and Friday. Yeah, you're right.
Kentucky-Louisville is going to be a crazy matchup. Rick Pitino against Calipari. I think that's good. That's going to be a good one that I think is going to go Kentucky's way. Honestly, I feel very good about Kentucky right now. Actually, Julius Randle is just a total beast. Virginia, obviously I don't know that much about college basketball, but I know Virginia is a big defensive team. I don't watch it that much during the year. I can't get into it until the tournament. But I have Virginia as my champion. Hate me. They're a 1 seed, I know. I'm actually really, really excited to watch Dayton Stanford and see how two of these underseeded, teams from smaller not smaller conferences, but smaller basketball schools, how they fare against each other. I think that's really going to go a long way in kind of playing out the storyline of, Cinderellas and how they do against one another this year.
Well, for as much parity as we've had this year, because everybody's talking about this being the craziest tournament ever, and I admit it's been kind of nuts. But let me just run down the line real quick. We do have 3 1 seeds left. We have 2 2 seeds, and then there's a 3 seed and 4 4 seeds. All 4 4 seeds are still there. So I mean, as far as that goes, beyond that, there's 2 11s, a 10, a 6, a 8, a 7. I mean, there's still. I mean, you still see a lot of the powerful teams left. I think again, I go back to the saying with Villanova at the top of this topic. I feel like, they were a 2 seed, but they were kind of a weak 2 seed. And the same thing with Syracuse and their seeding is when Syracuse was undefeated early in the season. I know Syracuse fans don't like to hear it, but I remember thinking like they should have lost like 3 or 4 games. They were like skin of their teeth. Pittsburgh, Duke, just to name a couple that they really probably shouldn't have won games against. For me personally, I really like the Kentucky-Louisville game because it's 2 teams from Kentucky, 2 storied college franchises in basketball. You have big Julius Randle in there. I really want to see him. I think he's going to be a machine at the next level. The other one I like is, I guess I really like the Virginia-Michigan State. I was kind of caught out in the cold earlier when the seedings happened, calling Virginia a week 1 seed. I still kind of think they are, but thus far they're proving me wrong. So I think that's about all the time we have. Let's get a little prediction from both of you. There's 3 1 seeds left: Virginia, Florida, and Arizona. Joe, do you think any of those guys lose in this next Sweet 16 round? And if so, who do you think loses?
Honestly, I think UCLA is a pretty good team. I think they could give Florida a run for their money. Michigan State, another awesome team. I think Virginia gets a run for their money. But I think Arizona against San Diego State is probably the safest at this point.
All right, Michael, same question to you.
No, as much as Barack Obama really wants it to happen, I don't see them losing. Any 1 seed losing yet. But like Joe said, it's going to be close. If anybody's got a chance to do it, probably Michigan State has the best chance to knock off Virginia. But again, I personally I don't see it happening.
Personally, for me, I feel like Florida's going to win, probably because I need them to do that. I just feel like Florida's a powerhouse. But I honestly think San Diego State and Michigan State are both pulling off the upset in this next round here, and I think we're going to watch Virginia and Arizona go home. Until next time, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. You can find us at the logos here. Geez, I'm really bad on this other computer.
There it is.
www.sports-kings.com. You can hit us up on Facebook if you just type in Sports-Kings into your search bar. And chop it up with us on Twitter at Real Sports Kings. On behalf of myself, Michael, and Joe, I'd like to say thank you for tuning in. Have a great day. And until next week, check out Sports-Kings.